Hi everyone. I'm back with a video that is a little kind of outside of what I had been doing up to now, but very connected to one of the cases that has garnered a lot of questions both on the Justice Channel and now on mine as well, and that is the Diddy case. I am going to be responding particularly to the New York Times article that just dropped titled, "I Knew Diddy for Years. What I Now Remember Haunts Me." It was written by Danyel Smith, who writes about her time as the editor or the chief editor for Vibe. And she, along with her colleagues, decided to do an article and a cover story that centered Diddy after the death of his best friend and music partner, Biggie. The article is about her own experiences as both the editor and creative director of the shoot. The centering facts of the article are such that Diddy wanted to approve the cover photo, which was not Vibe's protocol. And that is very common. And it talks about kind of both the verbal threats he made towards her, the threats of death, that he showed up at her office, that her coworkers had to hide her, that she was moved from the building, that she was sent home in a cab, that she had to call her lawyer, that she was reprimanded for calling her lawyer, that he threatened to kill her. And while none of this is surprising to me, the article is so tragic in kind of so many ways that are both expected and unexpected. The author of this article clearly states she was never essayed by Diddy, which is important, right? But what we are seeing as more and more of the civil cases are coming out against him is that he had a pattern in practice of deep issues with control, with harming people. And that manifested itself kind of in all realms of his life, that he held on to power, both economic power, corporate power, sexual power, relationship power, familial power, in so many different, really problematic ways. And all of the people around him knew, right? And so the allegations in this article are such that not only did she experience this kind of horrific trauma that she talks about as a trauma that she had compartmentalized and forgot about, which is very common with traumas, and how in many ways it derailed a lot of her subsequent years, but also kind of that people witnessed it. So many people in the industry knew of his reputation, right? And of the potential harm that he had caused, and allegations that he was also involved in Tupac Shakur's death. And what we see is kind of this consistent behavior of harming people in different ways to hold, maintain, and assert power. Why is this important? Why is this article important? One, it's an incredible article. We will link it below, as I said, and I highly encourage you to read it, dissect it, talk about it, because it brings up so many important things that many of us can relate to in different ways, right? The issues of workplace violence, workplace harassment. What does it mean to be a bystander? What does it mean to feel protected? What does it mean to feel safe at work? What does it mean when you befriend an abuser, right? So she talks about how there are these pictures of her in the 90s with him after this incident at Vibe, and she's smiling and drinking, and her feeling a lot of shame around that, right? Very common victim behavior. And also this idea of victim blaming, right? Like her blaming herself for either not holding him accountable, but also putting herself in the presence of him, but also wanting her career to move ahead and knowing what she had to do to protect herself professionally, and then feeling shame around that, right? So all of these questions about what sacrifices are we willing to make for our own professional financial success, the kind of cult of celebrity and what that means, and this issue of when you know people in your orbit, be it professional or personal, do bad things, what is your responsibility to the victims, but also to those individuals to right their wrongs. The issue of an industry that knew of his bad behavior but still uplifted him, people who invested in his companies, the list goes on and on. As we hear and know now that lots of people knew of the harm, the physical harm he was causing, people who he was intimately related with, and also some of the very problematic allegations that we're hearing about illegal behavior around drugs, sex trafficking, and more. And so this article is important because while there may not be a legal claim that this person, even she didn't share that she was interested in raising, but there may not be a legal claim. It shows that the behavior that is coming out in many of these cases and many of these civil suits is affirmed by his behavior throughout all different aspects of his life. Why is this important? It's important because the more people that come out and talk about this very problematic behavior, the more the individual victims are going to be believed. Now, that might be totally beside the point. Some people could say that should not be that way. Other people are going to say, which we can kind of go back and forth about. We should believe women, that we should give people the opportunity and the belief that they are not in this for the money. But what we know is that the narrative around a lot of the people coming forward, especially because they're coming forward in the civil context, asking for money as the relief sought, many of whom because there's no longer a criminal case, right? And they should have that ability to do. But there is skepticism among a lot of people. What this article does is show that his behavior was terrible in all different regards. And people in power, like this woman, right? She doesn't have the same power that he has, but she has kind of the objective power in society, right? She's an editor of a very famous magazine that's very successful. She has been very successful as a journalist, is talking about her own survivor story. And it is important because it affirms many of the stories of the other survivors. It also kind of allows us to start talking about when we experience our own victimization in the workplace or in realms outside of the intimate sphere. What is that, right? Is that domestic violence? Is that intimate partner violence? Is that harassment? What is that? And what can we do? And what recourses do we have? I really want us to stay very present with the Diddy case. I will be reporting on it as new cases come forward. But I think this article in particular is going to be incredibly important. And I hypothesize that there are going to be many more victims that come forward now after they see and read and hear about this article. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I'm Margo Lindauer, and that's the law.